something. Call to order this July meeting of the Maumelle Planning Commission. Mr. Lyon, do we have any announcements?
We'll defer to Mr. Grummer for the announcements this month.
Mr. Grummer, announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the announcements for this month, we've got Majestic Point, Lot 117R, which was a lot merger, came through for staff review, was approved and filed this past month. Hillman Addition, which was a plat in the ETJ a few months ago, finally got recorded. It got held up by Health Department, just approvals on certain things. And then in this item, number 3, application review process. Oh, and keep in mind, we laid down in front of you 3 things, one being the minutes that you can follow along on and take notes as needed, as well as information on public comments that came in this month through the staff, and then information on one agenda item dealing with the commercial C1 type zone. Commissioners had requested information concerning the review time processing with city staff and the challenges and the inconsistencies that were coming in with when we were getting things out. I appreciate the commissioners bringing that to my attention. We've discussed it internally and talking about that for the last several months. One of the things that I think the commission needs to be aware of is that every item that comes through an agenda requires different amounts of review and different amounts of due diligence. For the most part, most everything does come in on time, but we've tried to fit our processes into what was previously done, and now that we're doing a little bit more due diligent review, we are creating a little bit of a backlog, but then there are some items that we find that are incomplete that have to come in through that process. Typically, that's vetted out through a pre-development process where they come in. This month was excessively heavy on the agenda. It's the heaviest that I've had since I've been here, so that was certainly one of the issues, but also trying to finish out and working with every applicant as to certain things that we need to work on and get done. So with that, I wanted to make the commission aware that we're going to be making some, and I've spoken to the mayor, to the city attorney, and kind of worked through this process to adjust our processes to be able to provide a more consistency with the packet as it comes out to the Planning Commission. One of those things is within the bylaws, we're required to provide the agenda up to 3 days from the meeting. Rather than providing the agenda the week before, which puts us under pressure timeline, we're going to set a time and day of that 3-day period, which would be 5 p.m. on a Monday of the week of the Planning Commission for that Thursday. That does give us a little extra time at the end of that week, as well as on the weekend if we need to work through some stuff. And then we're going to start getting a little bit more due diligent on the ordinance requirements when it comes to review. PRD, subdivision, it does suggest a pre-development meeting with staff prior to filing an application. And we also have up to 60 days to bring that to Planning Commission. We're not saying that we're going to be extending our review process to 60 days, but what we are going to be doing is pressing for that pre-development meeting 30 days prior to the application to make sure that we have that. A lot of times we can vet a lot of the things that bog us down after the application comes in and get that taken care of, so when the application comes in, it's clean and we have less work to do, and it gives us more time to prepare for the subcommittee and the agenda. So just FYI, that's as far as this month. There was the last item on item 6. Of course, we were working with the applicant on that throughout the month, and they're going to come up and speak to that at the end. So they have, so anyway, that's that announcement. And then if commissioners have any comments on that, I'd suggest during this time is probably the best time to talk about that. And the last thing, we announced several months ago that we're starting the land use update for the land use map this year. We have completed our process internally, so we're going to be working and partnering with the mayor's office to begin to define how that public process rolls out to get some input on that side. So we'll be providing that information at the 1st of August and hopefully begin that process in August. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grummer.
Mr. Chair, may I have a comment?
Absolutely.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Grummer, I appreciate that very much, because some of that was stemmed from an email that I provided to you, and I appreciate you responding to it. The only thing that I'd like to add or request as it comes through, so if you end up moving the agenda deadline out, is that when the packets come out and they're published to the public, the latitude of changes needs to be, would be, in my mind, need to be very small.
Right.
And not see large changes between the Thursday, which when we're getting packets Thursday, and we were seeing those. So there is some latitude there, I understand that, but, you know, major changes, parking and just to name things, right, and shifting around, and a variance pops up and those things of that nature. And I think that's your full intent to be able to address that. Mainly is because I don't want something out to the public and then we are seeing something to act on without that time period. Just like in this case with Harris and his developments, we got it yesterday, it doesn't even meet the 3-day requirement.
Right.
So it's not that we're shoehorning anything through. We're being very, very diligent, but I don't want it to have the perception of that.
And again, that's what that pre-development process is for, is to help vet out things that we're not having to scramble at the last minute through the review process to get that done. So that's the whole intent, so that you have a static agenda that doesn't move and you have something you can make a better decision on. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Fisher?
my only comment would be is that waiting until Monday to get a packet creates a little bit of a problem in my mind, and that is because if there are things that we need to go out and look at, we have had the weekend to do that. We've had the weekend to study. Everybody at this table is employed, works, and if we're not getting it, it puts a burden on us. So I would encourage you to continue to meet the Friday deadline for getting packets to us.
So to that effect as well, we will provide information prior to the subcommittee meeting that typically gives you the information that you're going to be working on and voting on when it comes to the actual agenda. So I'll certainly work to accommodate. I just want to make sure that we're setting expectations that we can meet and that you feel like that we're not extending anything. So, and of course, the Planning Commission can always contact staff and we can get you any information that you need as early as you need and update you as needed. So.
Any further questions, comments from Commissioner, Mr. Drummer? All right, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. You've all been provided a copy of last month's minutes in your packets. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to be made? Does anyone have a motion?
Chairman, I move for approval of the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and multiple seconds. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed, no. All right. Minutes are approved. I have no public comments on non-agenda items, so I will open up the public hearing. We have no old business, and we'll move into new business. As a bit of a procedural announcement to those that are present, we have multiple agenda items with several subparts, and there are a number of public comment cards. If you've submitted a card, you will all get a chance to speak. I will remind everybody that public comments are limited to 3 minutes. And we do ask that you, respect the time of the commission as well as anybody else who wants to make a comment. And the way we'll handle this is we'll introduce a agenda item. We'll ask for the staff report on that, and then after the staff gives its report, I'll go through the public comment cards and invite you one by one to comment on the item that you wish to speak on. So moving on to item number 1, the Pinnacle Heights subdivision, which includes the subparts of proposed annexation proposed amendment to the master land use map, and proposed amendment to the master zoning map. Mr. Grummer, staff report.
So, Mr. Chair, this item, Pinnacle Heights subdivision, came through the Planning Commission several months ago. It was denied by the Planning Commission, but with plats that come through, the applicants were given a list from the Planning Commission as to why it was denied, and they had the ability to finish those items, get them complete, and bring them back, which came back the next month. They followed, we verified, they followed all notification requirements, the same as the previous month for a preliminary plat. This property is out in the county. The Planning Commission approved the preliminary plat, and as a condition of that approval, the annexation was part of that list. So what is in front of you is meeting the requirements that were placed as part of that approval. With this annexation, it's annexation into the city of Maumelle. They have filed with the county. The county has reviewed it, and it is complete, so it is in the process of being going through the county to be released. We are running this one concurrently with the county to reduce the amount of time required for the annexation, and we're expecting, hoping that that release from the county will happen fairly soon. Once it's released, City Council can move to accept that annexation. On your side, there's 3 items to vote on tonight. One is the annexation of Pinnacle Heights subdivision. The second one is setting the land use for the property, which is currently extraterritorial jurisdiction, and the request is to go to single-family residential. And then the proposed amendment to the master zoning map to change to set the zoning, which is currently county, to R1 single-family residential. The entire subdivision is laid out as a single-family residential that meets similar design and requirements to other single-family residential neighborhoods in the area. So staff recommendation, you have 3 items. Item A, proposed annexation. Staff recommends a do-pass recommendation to City Council to accept the annexation of Pinnacle Heights subdivision. And of course, this is going on to City Council, either do pass or do not pass.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grummer. We'll now move on to public comments. First, I have Jay Greeland of 135 Richard Drive. All right, sir, I realize I've just stated your name and address, but for a record, if you could please state your name and address.
Sure.
And you have 3 minutes, and
Sure.
Timer will ding once your time's up.
Okay, Jay Greeland, 135 Ridgeland Drive. I'm really late to this conversation because I only learned about this a couple of months ago when an anonymous letter arrived in our mailbox alerting us to this. And so Scott Grummer educated me earlier this week about everything's in it. And so at this point, it seems like it's a done deal. But I bought the house in 2003, and I've often wondered why nobody built on that really pretty lot at the end of the cul-de-sac. Now I know, because it was set aside for this extension of Ridgeland. And I think that's my only concern is, and I think my neighbors share that concern, is the traffic. I understand from Mr. Grummer that it was built as a collector street. But this was built in 2000, or I don't know when it was built, but I've lived there since 2003. This is the first I've ever heard of that plan, the master plan. And so I think the concern is the traffic. We already have some issues with people going too fast, even with the dead end and all the cul-de-sac. We've got a couple of speed bumps. So there's the concerns that I've heard from other neighbors and that are mine is the amount of traffic, and understand the counts again that have been proposed, and also the construction traffic that will be inherent in the project initially, just to develop it and to build the houses. So, at this point, I mean, I think none of us, they had to cut a road to build my house, and I like it. It's got a nice view of Pinnacle Mountain, so I'm not opposed to building. It's just what is gonna happen to Ridgeland Drive as a street and the quiet neighborhood that we know. And so again, I don't know what's left to be done. I just wanted to voice my concerns. Okay, and I just wanted to, and just ask, and I don't expect an answer now, but is there some way that the developer, does the street have to go through there? I know there eventually will be other egress or access roads in and out. Is there a way to persuade, either from the voice of the residents or the city council, to maybe forego that extension, just leave that buffer and just use the other routes in and out that eventually we've been told we'll use anyway and cut the traffic? Oh.
Thank you. Next we have Scott Myers.
Scott Myers, 119 Ridgeland Drive. I'm just the same person as this gentleman. I don't want to see the traffic count because I think there's like 240 homes that are going to be scheduled. Average house has 2 cars. It's 480. It's going to be running down Ridgeland Drive. The only way I see that there could be any guess from my point is another exit point, but they're not showing any exit point other than the 2 emergency exits. They could put another street and lose 2 lots, but I think that refuge area is going to be an issue that they can't put a street there going up into it. But my vote is no, because I don't want to see the traffic and all the things that go along with it. I don't think they can use the other 2 exit points as an entryway if they want to pay money to rebuild those roads. Because I looked at Google Earth, and those roads that are the emergency exits are in very bad shape. So just wanted to see that you guys vote no for this. We don't need that kind of business in that area. Thank you.
Next we have Ms. Susan Mabry.
My name is Susan Mabry. I live at 111 Traveler Lane, and I have a petition, and it's concerning this issue. It reads, due to the greatly increased traffic noise, wear and tear on the street, and loss of acres of wildlife habitat, I cannot support the building of a multiplied number of new homes in the Ridgeland area. And 60 residents have signed this, 57 of whom live on Ridgeland. Who should I give this to?
Mr. Carter, please. Thank you. Last we have Jerry Rouse.
Yes. My name is Gary Rouse. I'm a resident of 107 Ridgeland, and I too have the same concern that those that have already spoken, that we already deal with traffic in the area as it is, and those with small kids, that's a danger to them. And with this area being built, we have more of an increase of traffic and loud noise of music or whatever. But as stated that, a decision has possibly already been made. If we can maybe get, like they say, another interest in to where when they start the building, the construction or whatever, and out when it's completed, would be greatly appreciated.
And I'd like to add, I received a phone call this afternoon from Mr. Jim Modal at 170 Ridgeland. His house is situated at the end of the cul-de-sac right where the new road will connect in. His comments were largely reflective of what we've heard from the other residents today, primarily focusing on the change of character of the neighborhood, the loss of the green space, and additional traffic on Ridgeland, as well as the Ridgeland intersection with Odom Boulevard.
And Mr. Chair, I'll also add,
Come on up. Name and address, please, once you get to the podium.
Again, my apologies for being new to the process. I appreciate the time. My name's Jeff Lingo. I live on 126 Breckenridge. We just went through an horrific event of having a subdivision developed. I guess it would be on the south side of Breckenridge. The noise was terrible, breaking those rocks, and it was just constant. It'd be on the weekends, it'd be early in the morning. I'm retired, so I got to hear it all. That is a concern. It's going to happen the same thing, but now it's going to be in my backyard instead of across the street. The other thing is, there's a huge drainage ditch in the back of our property line, which is next to the woods that you guys are going to develop. And it's probably a 5-foot drainage ditch. The runoff is already so bad that one of my neighbors had to replace their fence because the erosion had took it away. So the neighbors that I've talked to wanted to make sure that, and ask the question, is there going to be a walking trail or a small green space between that property, or is it going to be developed all the way up to our property line? Does anybody know? I haven't looked that in depth at the plat.
Bring it up, Jason.
We're bringing that up on the screens.
Yeah.
Approximately 20 feet, looks like, from property line to property line. So it's pretty much, that's gonna be your 15, 20-foot drainage easement coming back through there.
But is there any way we could add like a walking trail to that to give us a little, because when we bought the house, they didn't tell us it was gonna be a green space. We knew there's a possibility this could happen. But I've got 3 big picture windows in my backyard, in my living room, that looks out to the trees, and you know, you see deer walking by every once in a while. I hate to lose all of that. So all I would ask is, if you're gonna make walking trails or something in that property, give us that little bit of buffer between the two. Plus it may save some erosion going in that ditch that's already fairly deep. But again, my main concerns were the noise level. What are we gonna do about that? Is it something we're just gonna have to endure? Or can we put some limitations where it's not on the weekends? And talking about that green space, is there any way we could extend that? That was my concern. Thank you.
And, Mr. Chair, I'll add that we did receive seven public calls, all asking questions and information about the process, and with some of the similar concerns that were there, and an email that came that was copied to the planning commissioners that you should have received.
Thank you. All right, we'll open the floor to the commission for any questions or comments directed to staff or the applicant. Mr. Griffin?
I'm Jess Griffin, 5 Kingston, Thruck. I'm the applicant's representative, and I just wanted to address some of those concerns of the people. We're following the master street plan, so we're trying to stick to what Maumelle has planned out for the future. And we followed all your guidelines. We didn't ask for any variances. We are doing R1, which is the most restrictive housing. We're trying to do high-end, nice housing, nothing that's going to bring the neighborhood down. Ridgeland Drive, it is 36 feet wide already, and it is a collector on the master street plan, so it's built and designed to carry the load of the vehicles. The fire department has approved all of our emergency exits. And the main thing is what we're doing is we want to come into the city and we want to pay taxes and we want to make it fair to everybody in the city. If we're living right next to people in the city, we're going to be a part of the city too. So we're trying to meet what y'all want. I mean, I think that's the whole idea, is that we can't connect to your road if we're not gonna help pay for the road. And that's why we're doing it. We're gonna help pay for everything in Maumelle. We are leaving 20 to 30-foot buffers. I think on the Ridgeland side, right there, at the end of the road, there's a 30-foot buffer, and then down that other street, I can't remember the name, it's 20. I've just now got a lot of the civil plans done. We're gonna have several detention ponds, and we're gonna reduce the runoff, and we're gonna follow all the rules on detention, erosion control. I've been working with ADEQ. I've got a plan with them. I've got a few comments back from them, and they're gonna be satisfied with our erosion control plan. And so we're just trying to follow the rules and make everybody happy and dot our i's and cross our t's and do it the process that y'all want us to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any questions or comments from the commission?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, what we're looking at tonight is the annexation and the land and zoning. This, we talked about some time ago. We've not approved a preliminary plat on this yet, have we?
Is it approved?
Yes, sir, you have.
It's contingent.
It was contingent upon it coming in.
The annexation.
Correct.
All right, that's what I couldn't remember, thank you.
Would you like me to speak to that just briefly?
Yeah, sure.
So, and just as a reminder, this is an annexation. The preliminary plat was reviewed twice. It was approved by the Planning Commission. So they are approved to build the subdivision as it is designed. No other requirements can be placed on them as far as walking trails or anything of that nature dealing with the development that's been approved and that entitlement's been passed. This was a contingency of that approval. If annexation does not happen or the city does not accept it, they still have the ability to build the subdivision. It's just that they would have to go through the county, and it would be in the county and not in the city. And in that, in the discussions and in that process, they still can use Ridgeland, but you would have county services coming down Ridgeland to serve a county neighborhood. So they have the right and ability to develop that land, and we could not find where their access to Ridgeland could be restricted. So the purpose of this, and the reason why they've been amicable to annex into the city is because it gives city oversight on the construction of the homes, it gives city oversight on the construction of the streets, and to make sure that it meets our design standards and criteria, and that's for the betterment of the city in the future. It also means that we can run code enforcement and we can run our other services, police, fire, and help manage and oversee the neighborhood versus the county.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Further questions or comments from the commission?
Has there been any traffic analysis, rudimentary count of any sort on Ridgeland?
So I've requested just to get a timestamp of where we are. We're going to be doing a average daily traffic count on it. The collector size of 36 feet allows for up to 5,000 average daily trips a day. So based on the estimations that we had within the area that is served by this collector, we were estimating around 1,800 or so average trips per day. Based on when we went through the process, it was determined that there was sufficient capacity of Ridgeland in order to accommodate the expansion.
Mr. Wright in the audience,
Well, I didn't.
if you have a comment, I would recognize you.
I didn't fill out a card, but I didn't see the name of this subdivision. I'm John Wright, number 1 Country Club Circle. We filed a preliminary plat in 1989, and it's called Pinnacle Heights. And, you know, we've done a lot of advertising. It's for sale right now, too. It's called Pinnacle Heights. So I object to the name.
Where's the location, Mr. Wright?
It's where the water tower is.
So if that was applicant, it would have been expired.
Well, is it a preliminary or a final? If it's not final, then
It was filed, quite frankly, it was filed it can't be changed by the planning commission because there was a rule set. It was an approved, yeah, it was a government deal, but, I can't remember what to call it right this second, but it's approved, and it's proved, we could go in there and start building right now, just like we did in Majestic Heights.
So that's something that we can always adjust if we need to. So what I'd recommend is if you can give me information on that approved filed subdivision so that we can show for the record that it is, we couldn't find it on the record, so if you could.
I definitely got it all.
Okay.
Along
Get that
with-
to me and we'll work that out.
Along with an attorney's opinion, even from the staff,
Okay.
old staff, about the legality of it, not running out.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. I just have a comment. You know, we, as the commission heard, you know, this was very unique in its application. You know, of us hearing a preliminary plat and development plan. Oh, I guess there's no development plan with this one because it won't be necessary. But it was unusual, and it's a little unfortunate too, as we hear some of the comments, which are good comments as part of that process, and now we made that contingent upon annexation. So as we move forward, and I know that the next item doesn't sit in that same basket as this one, but I think that should give us some due caution as other developments come through.
Further questions, comments from the commission?
I guess with Mr. Wright's comments that we just had, can we move ahead with the Pinnacle Heights subdivision
Well,
until we get clarification on that?
Take clarification from our city attorney, but this is just a recommendation to city council, and as we often make certain subject tos to our recommendations, that possibly could be something that perhaps give a recommendation subject to getting the naming cleared up.
Which, if I may address that, the name is on a preliminary plat. If it needs to be adjusted, it can be adjusted for the final. It's the final plat that actually is recorded and sets the name. So, and typically you'll sometimes find those kind of adjustments between the time period of the preliminary and the final.
That can be adjusted by staff, right?
Yes, sir.
Street names are another example too, 911.
Correct. Do we have any other questions or comments on the proposed annexation? And if not, do I have a motion?
I'll make a do pass motion to recommend to the city council to accept the annexation of Pinnacle Heights subdivision.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, the annexation will get due pass recommendation. Under the same heading, we move on to the proposed amendment to the master land use map from ETJ to SFD. Mr. Grummer, any further staff report?
No further report other than this is for the land use for single-family detached housing, which is just single-family, no multifamily. Staff recommendation is a do pass recommendation to City Council to amend the master land use plan from ETJ to SFD.
Thank you, Mr. Grummer. Any questions or comments from the commission? Does anyone have a motion?
I'm sorry, this is due pass, Mr. Chair.
Correct.
Make a recommendation for due pass recommendation to City Council for proposed amendment to the master land use plan from ETJ to SFD regarding Pinnacle Heights subdivision.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. We will have a due pass recommendation. Now moving on to subpart C, the proposed amendment to the master zoning map from county to R1. Mr. Grummer, further staff report?
Just this is amending the master zoning map as the annexation comes in, that it would be zoned from its current county status to an R1, which is for single-family detached. Staff recommends a do pass recommendation to City Council to amend the master zoning map.
Thank you, Mr. Grummer. Any questions, comments from the commission? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion for a do pass recommendation to the city council to amend the master zoning map
from county to SFD.
Actually,
War
R1, I'm
one.
sorry.
Oh.
That's a mistype, my bad.
R1, or county to R1 for the property described at Pinnacle Heights.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. We'll issue a due pass recommendation for the zoning map. Now move on to item group number 2, the Bradley family property. Mr. Gromer, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the next item is another annexation. Sorry. This one actually does not have any proposed subdivision or development. This was actually the owner of the property. It's a single owner for the land. They approached the city I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Hello?
That's better.
All right. So, that's all right. So the owner approached the city with an interest to annex into the city their land. Again, like I said, there's no subdivision such as the previous one. The property is located on the north side of Maumelle. It's abutting Highway 365, and it abuts the city on its south boundary against the railroad tracks. The owner has actually gone through the entire annexation process, and they've been approved. Actually, the county has already released the property, so the owner is just waiting for the city to receive the property in annexation. There's also the amendment to the master land use plan and the master zoning map. The owner has requested that the property be on the northern abutting 365 to be C1. It's our lightest commercial, which is typically used in our village center, which is shown on the Maumelle forward, not in this specific location, but because of the streets that are adjacent to it, it does meet being on an arterial with adjacent collector streets is appropriate for a C1 type use. And then the larger part of the parcel that's to the south, they've requested the R1 zoning, which is again single-family detached residential for single-family development. Staff recommends a due pass. This goes to City Council as well. A due pass recommendation to accept the annexation of property described as the Bradley family property. I'll also mention that we have received several public comments. We certainly appreciate everyone reaching out on this. We've received approximately 14 phone calls on this and have been approached. Most have been inquisitive about the annexation. So we have, and just as a reminder on this, this is a single property owner that has requested to the city for their property to be brought into the city of Maumelle. This does not annex anybody's adjoining properties. It's just one property. So I just want to make that clear that also with this, the city will be taking in approximately 900 feet of old Maumelle Road that we would be required to maintain. It will not be the entire road, so it'll be a portion that abuts on the eastern boundary.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cromer. We'll move on to public comments. First public comment card I have is Ms. Beverly Edwards. All right, thank you, Ms. Edwards. If you please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Beverly Edwards, 3 minutes, whew. Beverly Edwards, 9411 Edwards Lane. Yeah. As the other subdivisions were concerned, we're concerned with the traffic. We are a small neighborhood. We're a small neighborhood, small little community, and we are concerned with the traffic as well. And you just stated that you're going to be doing 900 feet of, is it 900 feet of?
It's approximately 900 feet.
Okay, so now, is this already in works? Is this already planned for, construction?
So, so there's nothing been planned for this development, as well as the road. There's no required improvements, on the road to be annexed into the city. If and when in the future that somebody approaches the city, for development of the property, that's the point of time in which we have those conversations as to any requirements for improvements on the road.
Okay, and then one gentleman was saying that, we're worried about the traffic and the noise and I'm not gonna say everybody's undesirable, but everybody just coming in and out of the street that we don't know. Practically, we know everybody who's coming down our street. And we're calling down the street, do you know that car? Do you know this car? Because we're concerned because we have small children there. And we're very concerned. And, we just wanna know about, how many residents are is to be planned back here? How many houses or whatever is to be built back here? Does anybody know that?
Like I said, there's nothing been proposed for this land. This is just merely an annexation into the city.
Okay, so let me get this understanding correct. So it has been accepted as an annexation?
So the county has released it.
Okay.
So the county has released it. Now the city has to pass an ordinance to accept it, and that's what this process is.
Okay, so do we have a time frame on when that all occurs?
So upon the recommendation of City Council, it goes to, of the Planning Commission, it goes to City Council. City Council will be the first, it's 3 readings. The City Council meets the first, is it the first and third? First and third Mondays of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And then there'll be the first Monday in September. So that means the first Monday in September will be the 3rd reading.
Okay, so now how do we, on Old Maumelle Road, get this information? Do we go to your website? Is it posted? How do we get this information as it comes to you? About any approvals or anything of that nature? How do we get this information?
So one thing to note is currently it's in the county, and this is what the annexation process is for, and then also assign the zoning of R1 and a C1, as you can see on the map I printed earlier. One thing to note is if it is annexed into the city and it's approved, the zoning districts for the city take over, and that also will require upon development, either of a plat or if it's a commercial development, it will have to come to the city at that point. At that point, there are certain notifications that must go out, or there will be another sign that we put out on the street, as you saw now. I will say one big difference on this property versus the prior property. Mm-hmm. If this property develops, it's going to be required to have 2 entries. So there's going to be 1 entry coming off of Highway 365, okay, and 1, if not 2, depending on how the development goes with an R1 development coming off of Old Maumelle Road. Okay. So there won't be necessarily a choke point where you only have 1 road coming in and out. Okay. You'll have 2, possibly 3 or more roads coming in and out.
That was my next question.
And at that point, for instance, if it is an R1, let's say an R1 plat comes in, mm-hmm, they'll be required to give additional right-of-way to meet a collector standard, mm-hmm, for that road. One thing also to note, there will not be a crossing at the railroad tracks, so everything will remain on the north side of the railroad tracks. Mm-hmm. The Union Pacific does no longer allows any new at-grade crossings, and that has been closed. Okay. So your entries are going to be on Old Maumelle Road, which would be for the residential portion. The commercial portion would be coming off of Highway 365. And what they're proposing is a C1 zoning for the roughly 9 acres on the far north end. Sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at once. Okay. You can scroll south a little bit. One moment.
Thank you, Jason. So, and I can have, we can certainly have a list, a piece of paper out there if anybody wants to sign up if any additional information for any future annexations in the area, we'll be more than happy to communicate that when it comes to annexations. But as far as Jason said, the process follows whenever the development happens. We follow typical public notification requirements.
Okay, so just to be clear, we have two roads coming off of 365, correct? And then there will be some entrance on Old Maumelle Road.
We do not know that.
No, We don't. Again, this
know
is just an annexation. There's no development that has been proposed for this land. So again, when they choose to come to the city, whoever decides to develop on the land, then we'll begin to have those conversations as to where those are supposed to be. Again, this is just land annexation. It does not have, we don't have all those answers yet.
Okay. Well, that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next comment we have is Mr. Rick. Please forgive me, I cannot quite make out the last name.
I keep it hidden so you can't call it.
Fair enough.
All right, please, name and address for our record, please, and then you have 3 minutes.
Rick Scott, 10502 Panther Mountain Road, which is not in Maumelle. That gives you a little clue here where I am and how is Scott these days. You're doing very well. You're picking up on the business.
I'm trying to.
Well, just listening to this, we probably all need to hear a little bit more about what annexations are. The biggest problem I see personally is that it's going to put the Maumelle City within a mile of my residence and people along Panther Mountain Road, which means we're going to be under your say-so as to what we can do and what we can't do. And that's always a concern because we're out in the county and like being out in the county. I suppose the other thing is if you get to that where you're with 1 mile, then maybe we need to start talking about if we can run for office over here. I think it's still 1 mile. Somebody hasn't extended it back to 5 miles or anything. That was the question.
Yeah, the state legislature a few years back did change, depending on the city size, extraterritorial jurisdiction and what a city can and cannot do. At this time, Maumelle, for 1 mile, does subplatting subdivision. So if there is subdivision of land, the plat should come through the city for planning purposes, but we do not zone in the county.
Right, but the county zones. The, pardon me, trying to spread my germs around a little bit. See, all aren't wearing masks. The other thing that I think is that you're going across the railroad tracks, you're going to be north of the railroad. And in effect, you're creating a Maumelle island because you're not, the railroad disconnects you from the rest of the main part of Maumelle. So this is kind of away from what you've been doing in the past. I mean, you've got the area down there with the commercial center, but to have just an isolated piece of land out here that is disconnected from the city of Maumelle, there's not going to be a road into it. All the roads that you're talking about that may occur are going to be coming onto 365. And I heard him saying something about a choke point. We have a choke point up where we are, and we like the choke point. Main reason we like the choke point is it keeps people, sort of restricted into it and restricted out. So if somebody comes in there and starts messing around, somebody can go down to the choke point and have a chat with them, which is a nice thing. More communities ought to have that situation. But I just wanted to say, we appreciate knowing about when people are doing annexations in that area, particularly when they occur getting up into through Road 365. You can all appreciate that. And then talking about a commercial area, Maumelle is a big commercial area, but anymore we have.
Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir.
Your time's up, unfortunately. We appreciate your comments.
Anybody want to let me continue?
Any commissioners like to yield?
We would just give the same amount of time to others that were spoke. We limited them to 3 minutes as well, so.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
And Scott, I do want to be on that annexation list.
Lydia, would you mind getting a piece of paper outside and allow people to put their, if you wouldn't mind doing that, so as they leave, they can put their names down.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So regarding annexation, it's just not before us a lot, and we get 2 in 1 month, so it's a little unusual. So, yeah, we're a little slow to this. So do you know off the top, when we have a separation, as the gentleman said before, and we're really not contingent, we have a railroad, which is not coming in as well, too. So we had a gap, whatever that is, 50, 75 foot of railroad right away. How does the state law regard, that in annexation?
As far as the I mean, well, so.
Contingent.
So we submitted to the state GIS, and they verified that the parcel is contingent to our boundary. So we do have state approval that it does meet the criteria.
And that interpretation is done by the county?
By the state.
By the state? It's done
By the state, yes.
Okay, thank you. The other question that I had, and it was in the same, I should have brought it up on the last one too, so the mayor signs this, almost looks like a form letter regarding services that are available there, and I was just wondering, are we purposefully omitting our sanitation services and recycling services?
So again, not knowing, it could be commercial served by independent. So right now, it's the primary services of fire, and sanitation is a typical service that we provide for residential that is not a private development or whatnot. Sometimes private developments have commercial style, but with that, both Public Works, Fire, and Police have all reviewed this, and they have the capacity in order to serve that area, Public Works especially.
So the request for sanitation would come during final plat?
Preliminary, whenever we review the preliminary plat for the development.
Well, we already reviewed it on the last one, so maybe.
Well, this one, we have not reviewed anything.
Understood. There's
But,
nothing.
yeah, on the last one, yep.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions or comments from the commission? Do I have a motion on the proposed annexation?
Make a motion for due pass recommendation of the city council for proposed annexation named Bradley Family Property.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, we'll issue a due pass recommendation. Moving on to subpart B, the proposed amendment to the master land use map from ETJ to SFD. Mr. Grummer, further staff comments?
So being that there's two parcels, actually it's one owner, but they've requested two different land uses. Again, one for the small parcel that abuts up against 365, they're requesting a change from extraterritorial jurisdiction to commercial land use. And then the larger parcel to the south, they're requesting a change from ETJ to single-family detached. Staff recommendation is a due pass recommendation to City Council to amend the master land use plan for these uses.
So you have two motions? Would that be two motions? Or can it be
Oh, you're saying one for commercial, one for SFD?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know the answer.
I believe it's going to be in one ordinance. So if it's one ordinance, it should.
It's separated out into two areas, but the two areas are defined in the one ordinance.
Okay.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
Good question.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for a due pass recommendation to the city council to amend the master land use map from ETJ to commercial and SFD property for Bradley family property.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. We will issue the due pass recommendation. Moving on to subpart C, the proposed amendment to the master zoning map from county to C1 and R1.
So, Mr. Chair, again, same property, no additional comments other than this is a request to go from from county zoning to the small parcel abutting 365 to be zone C1, which is our lowest commercial zoning, and then the larger parcel to the south to be zoned R1 for single-family detached residential. Staff recommends a due pass recommendation to the Maumelle City Council for a change to the master zoning map. And do note in my notes as a suggestion, that's not master land use map, it's master zoning map.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cromer. Any questions or comments from the commission? We'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion for a due pass recommendation to the city council to amend the master land use map.
Master zoning map, I'm sorry.
Master zoning map, sorry. From county to C1 and R1 for property described as Bradley family property.
Second.
All I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, we will issue a due pass recommendation. We will now move on to item group number 3, Diamond Center, Country Club of Arkansas, Phase 18, Track 4. Mr. Grummer, staff report.
Okay. And again, as we move on as well, for anyone that came for the last items, I believe Lydia will have a piece of paper out there if you'd like to be on the list for future communication concerning any future annexations that may be brought to the city. This item is in the Country Club of Arkansas. The location of it, as you'll see on the map, is located on Country Club Parkway, adjacent to the ball field. The applicant, and this is one of those, as I mentioned in my announcement, that worked out fairly well because they approached us a month before coming for an application, and we were able to work with them to determine their use as well as work out any details on the property. Now, what's before you right now is a conditional use permit. The development type that they've requested is a small strip center, one that you might find similar to, I refer to where the Tropical Smoothie is in North Little Rock, small little with, it's got 5 different bays in it, but in a PRD, for the type use, a drive-in restaurant is a conditional use. It's not allowed by right in the C1 zone. So what you have as the first item is a request for a conditional use permit for a drive-in restaurant in a PRD zone. And then the second item would be we have the proposed preliminary plat, then the proposed preliminary development plan, and then the proposed landscape plan and a proposed commercial building design. All those will be acted on separately. So we place the conditional use permit first so that you can discuss whether or not if you're willing to allow for a drive-in restaurant in a PRD zone. And I'll state we have received public comment on this. We received 10 calls, and we have obtained information from various social media for public comment on this, but and then I believe there were some emails that were sent to the Planning Commission. Some of the main concerns are dealing with not wanting commercial in the area. They prefer to have residential. Others is dealing with the potential noise concerns with traffic in the area on Country Club Parkway, mitigating that, and overall just concerns for commercial development so close to a residential neighborhood. In our review and determining the use of this, one of the things that we look at is what's appropriate for a land use in a PRD. The CCA, Country Club of Arkansas, is fairly big. It's had phases that have continued, and part of the phasing, this land was sold by the original developer to private owners for the purpose of commercial development. From the location standpoint, it makes sense because of its location to Country Club Parkway, which is an arterial, as well as Diamond Park is listed on the master street plan as a local road, but it actually acts more like a collector based on the modifications that have been made on White Oak Crossing and the traffic patterns there. There is a future roundabout that is coming in that the mayor has already worked through the state and gotten approvals for, and is expecting construction to begin this year, which is to connect Country Club Parkway to Counts Massey Road. And the intent of that is to assist with the traffic issues that are happening. We're seeing stacking on Diamond Park Lane That's some of the concerns that we heard from public comment, that any increased traffic there. Of course, with all those modifications with White Oak Crossing and the fact that the land uses around it are commercial and being utilized for that and adjacent to the park, staff recommendation on the overall commercial C1 type development is a positive. We do think it's a reasonable use. You've been provided an analysis of that. Jason, if you can pull that up. So land, it's special use residential and PRD to the north. To the south, it's the same. To the east, it's open space, and to the west, it's open space on this property. And then from the analysis standpoint, you've had an opportunity to read through that. But I'll go ahead. The property is zoned PRD, and as part of the larger Country Club of Arkansas development, meets the 4% allowance for commercial uses permitted in the C1 zone, marketing products for the conveyance of the neighborhood, low traffic generation offices, and offices for professionals. A drive-through restaurant is conditional use in a PRD, which is the reason for the request. The lot is the northernmost undeveloped parcel along Country Club Parkway, being adjacent to the city baseball park, which the developer of CCA has stated was intended for the purpose of commercial. So staff recommendation with the drive-through, we looked at our recommendation is a do-pass recommendation to City Council, contingent on meeting all staff, engineering, and planning commission comments. We do, from a staff standpoint, feel that restricting the business hours limited from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for the building, if a drive-through is approved. I will also mention that this item is a conditional use. If the conditional use has to go to City Council for approval, if the conditional use for a drive-in is denied, the actual site plan can still move forward if that is approved, but it would have to be modified to remove the drive-in. So that is separate. Just because the conditional use fails does not necessarily mean that the site plan would fail with it. It's a separate issue and a separate discussion item. So I just wish to point that out.
Thank you, Mr. Drummer. We'll now move on to public comments. First comment card I have is Ms. Jennifer Gunderman. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Welcome back.
I'm Jennifer Gunderman at 321 Caron Delay, and my comments are really geared toward all the items on the agenda, but I will meet my 3-minute limit. I live in the Porter subdivision that is adjacent to the proposed development. I'm not opposed to this development, but I do have several specific recommendations that are rooted in 4 broad objectives, which you all do a great job of meeting. Those are enhancing our safety, enhancing the value to our community, enhancing our residential property value, and enhancing the beautification of the developed property. For this development, in regards to enhancing the safety and the value to our community, we all know that the baseball fields are a wonderful resource for our youth. I believe, though, that we only need businesses in the surrounding area that support the needs of families and that have a family-friendly business mission. I would ask you to set permanent restrictions so that no adult-only types of businesses would be permitted to lease space in this development or any development near the ballpark. Examples of these would be tattoo or tobacco businesses or liquor stores. These businesses are fine elsewhere, but because they target customers at least 18 years old, they do not enhance the safety of the children in the area, and they do not add value to this area of our community. Secondly, to enhance the beautification of this area and our own property values, I ask that this development have attractive overlay requirements for the facade that require the use of only natural earth tone colors and natural-looking facade materials, such as the proposed stone and brick combination and what was done at the gas station. Since the back of the building faces the ball field, I hope it is also required to have an equally finished look. And also, specifically in regards to the landscaping, I would ask that you require in the landscape plan along the entire back side of the building, on the outside of that drive-through, to add a row of evergreen trees, not just shrubs, but preferably the tall-growing pine trees that are adjacent to the ball fields, and also to add them along the north boundary that is adjacent to the quarters neighborhood. These trees would give a visual barrier to help keep a natural look from the view of the ballpark, and they would help shield neighboring residents from the lights and the noise. And finally, I would ask for stringent requirements for the upkeep of the property according to the original landscape and design plans. As an example, if an evergreen tree dies, that it's replaced timely and not just left bare. I would like to see our city set high standards to keep our community clean, to ensure that litter on this property is routinely picked up. It's been upsetting to me to see trash laying out around our community, and I hope there will be high standards and enforcement mechanisms from the city to keep this area clean and inviting. Thank you.
Ms. Goodman?
Would you mind if I have a copy of that?
May I send it to you after? I just have the one.
Well, there have been a lot of requests on that, which I don't know if the decision, I guess, would come through tonight. So if you're going to request any of these, it would need to be made tonight at this. So I just want to make sure if y'all have any clarification. Actually, Lee, would you mind making a copy of that for me? Thank you.
All right, next comment, Mr. Ron Farrell. Name and address, please. You have 3 minutes.
Ron Farrell, 102 Cabinel Drive, Maumelle, Arkansas. 11 years ago, I moved into this home. It's brand new, adjacent to the ball fields of baseball to the south and to the west softball. I've enjoyed 10 years of watching these kids come around and play and all that. There's a drastic need for improving the parking available to the ball fields. Most of this is to the area to the east side of Country Club Parkway, which is now taken care of by Parks and Recreation for the past 12 years. I don't know who owned the property all that time. Probably the Country Club Development. This property is currently owned by people out of the state that you're talking about tonight. It's in 2 packages on the lineup of lots. There's 2 separate lots there, valued at different values, according to the city. And it's a mess. Do not put commercial property amongst a well-designed and well-built residential-only communities. That's not why we wanted to come into here. If I wanted to be in commercial, there's other parts around the city that I could be closer to. A store or a tattoo parlor. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. The bills of assurance for the quarters section and all other sections of Country Club Parkway states, no lot shall have a driveway access to Country Club Parkway. Now, the driveway access here, you enter off the Ballpark Road, but you exit onto Country Club Parkway. I don't see how you can prove this with that been in place since the Country Club Parkway was established. Thank you.
Was that a bill of assurance that you're making a quote from?
Yes, I am. And it's in every bill of insurance for the various devices that have come forward. All of them say no to being on Country Club Parkway.
Ron, are they taking off the walkway? Can I just say a word?
Yeah, if you'd like, please approach the podium. We're have a little trouble hearing you from back there.
I'm Pat Farrell. I live 102. Okay.
don't you all come take a walk out to the ballpark? I have people saying, where is the ballpark? I have no idea where it is. 11 years I've lived there, and I've loved it. Hope to do a few more years, too. Do you want to come and see how close this building with food being given and that is to my house? I look over it, right there. I and one other my neighbor, we will get to see this lovely building for as long. Do you think how long we may have to sit there on a house to sell it? Because how many people are going to want to buy a house that overlooks a drive-through restaurant that's going to be open till 10 o'clock at night with their lights on, shining in my windows?
Ma'am, are you objected to the drive-through conditional use or objecting to the commercial? Are you
I'm objecting to have that commercial building sitting there. But mainly, I thought her before my husband was good in keeping the. Yes, I don't think, and you know what? I don't think he's going to make any money there. I don't know why he wants to be there. Not many parking places. Think about it before you okay it tonight. Very seriously. I live there. I look over it. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mr. Earl.
Just got a couple of questions. I wasn't at subcommittee. With all respect to our engineer, I know two as well, who's in the audience. Is the drive-through use for is it specifically for, I just want to make sure this is clarification, it is for a restaurant. It makes that clear. It's like in the conditional use analysis, it says restaurant, but I just flipped through the application, it just says drive-through.
So in our ordinance, it's defined as a drive-in restaurant. From the definition of that, that's the only thing that we have that designates for a drive-through type use. Now, it does not define that it has to be a restaurant. It just basically defines for the drive-through element. It could be a pharmacy drive-through. It could be many different things. It's just basically a setup for a drive-through kiosk or a drive-through on the building. Now, of course, you can put conditions on that. You can require, if you like the drive-through, but you require not to have the voice-activated menu. If that comes up, you can put restrictions. I mean, that's what the conditional use is for. If you wish to approve and put restrictions, you can do that, as well as any additional screening requirements or things that you have concerns over.
What's on the south side? Is it open space?
On the south side is Diamond Center Drive. One of the things we looked at was, I'm sorry.
Okay.
One of the things we looked at was if to have a drive-through, the traffic based on the orientation that they're requesting on this can only go the one way in order for it to be on the driver's side window. We did look at, could it possibly be on the other side, change the traffic pattern so the lights didn't go towards the fence. We looked at those things as well as noise. One of the things that they did comply with this was moving the dumpster on the lot to the southeast corner to get as far away from the adjacent residential. So those are a few things on that. They did request the curb cut on Country Club Parkway for a means of trying to exit the traffic and not to create traffic jams going around the building with the other exit. Police, fire, and Public Works have looked at this. There's no adverse comments from them. And lastly, when we reviewed this, we were looking at the proximity to the residential. This is the one lot that's closest to the residential. So we looked at other patterns around the city to see if there was any precedence or anything that we've done to allow something similar. And there's actually a property on the Parkway, if you're familiar with Mazio's, not Mazio's Pizza. Marco's Pizza, right. That little strip center, actually, the north side of that building is approximately 50 feet from the fence line, lot line for the residential property next to it. This proposed project is, the building side is approximately 80 feet from the adjacent property line, and there is a drainage easement 40 feet in between, which is not on the other. So this one actually does have a little bit more separation from the one, but the Marco's does not have a drive-through. It's just a strip center type building.
So you did look at flipping the plan? To run the vehicles around the other side of the building, to put the lights back towards the diamond center side?
You would have to reorient the building in some fashion in order to do that, which would require revision by the engineers and the architects to meet that. But they did request this orientation to be towards Country Club Parkway, and the rear of the building to us seemed to be best facing towards the ballpark rather than the residential area if the building is to go in.
Another thing to consider, I mean, while we are not a body to enforce a private bill of assurance, if what Mr. Farrell's pointed out is correct, and this driveway cannot let out of Country Club Parkway, is that going to, as a practical matter, require a reorientation of the site? I mean, that's something for the applicant to consider, is we're not the body to enforce that bill of assurance, but if a group of residents wanted to do so, that could, create quite a bit of a headache and duplicate this effort if they were to have to come back.
So that's something that we're going to have to check into. The city attorney is probably going to have to weigh in on that, but we may need to meet with that and discuss it. That's something that actually was brought to my attention. I apologize for not checking the bill of assurance on that.
Go ahead, ma'am. I just wondered if the Property Owners Association was notified that that'd be a conflict with the bill of assurance.
I mean, I think it would be good for them to, it would be good to maybe meet with the Property Owners Association, some of their officers, and get their thoughts on that. But, as Mr. Gershner just pointed out, the city doesn't enforce the bill of assurance. It makes sense to look at the design and give that consideration first, especially from the applicant's standpoint, I would think. But, I mean, there's a private right of action by any of the affected residents or the Property Owners Association if it's in violation of that agreement.
I don't think we've ever approved anything that's been in conflict with the bill of assurance as a governing body.
Approved, I don't know if it's, necessarily because we were enforcing it or just kind of around. But, Mr. Wright, it's occurred to me that you may have a little information on this, being well involved in the development of this property. Do you have any recollection or knowledge regarding what the bill of assurance might say regarding that driveway?
Yeah, I'm John Wright, Country Club Development, #1, Country Club Circle. The bill of assurance that was mentioned up here is strictly for the subdivision. It has nothing to do with the commercial property. And there's already 1, 2, 3, at least 3 commercial buildings going on right now that backs out on, or pulls out on the Country Club Parkway. So, these is perfectly in line with everything that's being done.
Good, but that's all PRD, and don't you have PCD up there front? I don't know about that.
No,
It's
sir,
all
it's all
part of PRD.
It's all PRD?
Yeah.
Yeah, including the assisted living that's just up from that.
So,
Interesting.
Any other questions? Yeah. Just to give you a little background on the piece of property, we bought that or traded it to the city to build Diamond Park Drive, which wasn't there, and also to pave Count Massey Road after it was tore up building the first ball diamond. So, we traded it, that side of the street, to build that road, and it was all part of Country Club Development's intentions for this to be commercial from day one. And we otherwise we would have put residents on it, because we very well could have. But, you know, it's been 20-something years since we bought the land, so, you know, we definitely want to proceed. Well, we've already sold the land, so it's not ours. I'm just talking for the people that bought it. It's a good project, and as far as the lights, it looks like they've got landscaping around there to probably take care of that light issue.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
So
I would presume that other than some sort of commercial development, you're not gonna put a resident on that lot, are you?
I wasn't, no.
Because,
We've had several little plans drawn up, but
I mean, then that would fall under the, bill of assurance. You couldn't exit onto Country Club Parkway. So, I mean, you know, what do you do with anything other than it being a commercial development?
that's it.
Add it to the parking lot, somebody donate it, they need parking on that road. Like crazy.
Well, it's already been sold, but parking is an issue, especially when they have a ball game. And they've been parking over them, pulling them. I've seen that whole lot full of cars. So the city does have an issue with parking. But this has got, I don't know, 100 and something parking spaces. Do you recall, Scott?
No, this has, I believe, Jason, 20?
36.
No, 21.
Oh, no.
About 35.
35, okay. My bad. My apologies.
I drew it up originally, and I'm sorry, but that's not correct. Neither one of them. It's got a lot more than that, I can see.
Yeah, 36.
Yeah.
It goes all the way around the building.
That lot could handle
Well, no, it don't.
100 parking spots easily.
Of course, just keep in mind that this is privately owned and the park is city-owned, so the city would have to purchase it from the current owner to turn it into parking, and the city has not indicated any interest in expanding its parks in the ball field to turn this into parking.
Sure, name and address, please.
Randall Cole, 305 Carondelet. And as far as the parking, that would be a great use, because I don't know if y'all been there on tournament weekends, which is just about every weekend from spring to summer. There are cars everywhere, up and down Country Club, parking in the grass. All the ballpark parking spaces are filled. They have RVs there, tents, you name it. I mean, it's a big time thing, so having a restaurant or whatever is gonna cause a lot more traffic during that time. I mean, I'm not opposed to commercial there, but I just think y'all need to reconsider the parking too.
Are these RV units staying the night?
You what?
Are these RV units camping there overnight?
Overnight for tournaments, yes.
I think the city has addressed, or we learned of that not long ago, and that came up, which is being addressed by city.
My name is Earl Wright, 327 Carondelet Lane. Just like my neighbors said, that gas station along with the restaurant and that drive-through car wash is going to be causing a lot of traffic jams in the area. Along with the baseball games that we having on the weekend, there's going to be major backup. And also, you're going to be having that school opening up on White Oak Drive. You got to look at that, and then all the other subdivisions that will be opening up down that area is going to be causing a lot of traffic going in and out. Just look at McDonald's up there. McDonald's getting flooded. Can't even make a turn sometimes because it's backed up. So I say no to that drive-through restaurant, and really I say no to the drive-through car wash. Just after the gas.
There's no car wash on this.
Not gonna be a car wash?
Well, not proposed on this development. Are you speaking about the one that's under construction? That's already under construction. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I say no to that restaurant because it's gonna be causing a lot of backup. Thank you.
Name and address, please. And I just would caution, we'll indulge for now, but for future meetings, we would ask that you fill out a public comment card and give it to us ahead of time.
I didn't
so
know
we can plan, but
where to hand it in. My name's Orlando Martinez. I live on Fort Kingdom Court. As to your point, sir, with Marco's Pizza, there's a lot more trees between the homes and what's proposed up there. I live in that subdivision, and it wasn't what it is now. It's all commercial. I got a gas station, I got a school, I got another big building coming in by the traffic circle, and now you guys are putting a commercial. I'm not sure what it was zoned before, and I understand taxes and revenue, but I don't think any of you guys would want to live where you guys are putting that in. I've been here for about an hour, and what I'm seeing is that a lot of you guys are tone deaf to what people are saying. People don't want this stuff, and you guys have already made decisions that's what's going to go in there. This is a provisional, what is it going to be when they say no? And they put something else in there. People don't want that in there, period. Plain and simple. And you guys aren't listening. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes?
Yes. Glad for your participation. We have a vacancy available. We'd be happy to accept your application.
I'm already on the CCPOA board.
There's a
So there is a
you have to-
representative here
I'm just saying
listening.
there's opportunities to serve.
I'll consider it.
Thank you.
questions or comments from the commission? We'll do one more.
I'm John Scobie.
Real quick, I see, you two gentlemen have, comments. Is there anyone else that, was planning for? Okay, after, you, sir, and you, sir, we're gonna cut off public comments, and again, we do ask you to fill out public comment cards, in the future.
Okay.
Name
I'm
and
John
address,
Scobie,
please.
16 Joe Lane in the chalet, right there. I disagree with that. It's all residential. You're talking about the people that you're building that right by, you're probably not 20 foot from the property. And you're gonna put that that commercial building right there on top of them. And the lighting and, heck, and when the ball season's on, there's kids out there playing in that area. I know that city's not interested in that property, but I think that'd be an excellent place for maybe some parking and for the kids to play while they've got ball season. And they built snowmen out there this year when we had the snow in that very area. So I disagree with the commercial building, and I wish you guys would really consider it. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Tim Clark, and I'm at 4 Shady Cove, Maumelle. I wanted everybody to know that the current owner's plans thus far is not to put a restaurant at that location. That's not to say that it will change eventually, but for the time being, the most amount of comments that I've had from other people and requests have been from people that are wanting to put in a pharmacy. And the drive-through window would be good for a pharmacy if it was to go at that location, since it is right across the street from the newly, whatever, I don't know if it's still planning on being built or not, from the assisted living center. So right now there are no plans to have a restaurant at that location. Again, that's not to say that it would change. The few people that have contacted me about it are the smaller mom and pop type, which, because of the size of that particular building and the one on the end, the unit on the end that would accommodate a restaurant, you really can't put a large franchise restaurant at that location anyway. So right now it's a smaller sized, built and scaled for a smaller sized either restaurant or retail location. Thank you.
All right, questions or comments from the commission?
I'm curious as to whether the people that have been coming forth, whether they believe that this particular building is one building that's gonna have one restaurant, or they're thinking that's what it's gonna be. This is actually being proposed for 5 individual units.
That's right.
So,
7,000 square foot building in the middle of a ball parking lot on the weekend. You're gonna have taxpayers.
Sir, I believe the concern is the encroachment of property, with the encroachment of commercial on people's backyards. You don't care if it's 1, 2, 5, 10, 11, doesn't matter. These are our homes.
Mr. Grummer, I realize we are going for a conditional use permit to allow a drive-in restaurant. You're using the term that's from the code. If we were to deny the conditional use permit, would a restaurant without the drive-through window or a pharmacy without the drive-through window nonetheless be allowed by right in this zone? They would, is that correct?
So first of all, just remember, yours is a recommendation to City Council.
Sorry.
So it's going to be either a do pass or a do not pass, and City Council has the final action on that. As far as by right, and Jason's put up what's allowed by right and conditional use in front of the screen that you have. So from a restaurant, you can kind of see drugstore, fruit store, gift shop. It does allow for a restaurant, cafe, or tea room by right. It's just the drive-through component is required to have a conditional use.
And this may be a question for either Jason Wolf, the code section, or the city attorney. I mean, I see we have drive-in restaurants there.
Correct.
Is there any further definition that states any drive-through? I mean, and that even says drive-in and not necessarily
No.
drive-through. And maybe I'm just being the lawyer here splitting hairs, but I mean,
So-
I'm hearing a lot of resident concerns, and I mean, certainly there are things that we can't just deny on our own whim, but I think we need to be pretty precise with our language here and understand what we're looking at.
Let me get to the definition of drive-in restaurant, and I'll read that to you. Okay. All right, it's under the definition of restaurant, comma, drive-in means an establishment that by design of physical facilities or by the type of service and packaging permits or encourages the purchase of prepared, ready-to-eat foods for consumption on or off the premises, and which may permit consumption on the premises in motor vehicles. The definition is specific to food preparation. It doesn't but there's no definition for drive-through. We looked for that as much, and there's no definition for it. So this is the best definition that we can have. So ultimately, if you wish to restrict the use is restricted by the zone, which is PRD, which allows for C1 type use. And allowed by right as a restaurant. So you're basically just authorizing the drive-through. If the drive-through or the drive-through window is authorized, and the city attorney I don't believe that that's going to restrict it from being a pharmacy if it's allowed by right.
No, the conditional use is specific to a drive-in in the context of a restaurant. So, there are other, I think it's pretty typical for a pharmacy to have just a window to pull up. I will note, we talked about it being on the driver's side and the circulation of traffic. There are other pharmacies that when, you're just pulling up to the window, it's a shorter drive-through area, and so I don't know if it would be possible to put it on the south end, but I know like Acre Pharmacy, it's on that end. You don't have a whole traffic pattern for the drive-in. So that, I don't know, that might be something to consider.
Do we have an owner's representative here? A representative, an applicant's representative for this development.
I'm John Pownell with Thomas Engineering, 3721 JFK Boulevard. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, as best of my ability.
I mean, we've heard from Tim just a few moments ago that there doesn't seem to be a current intent to put necessarily a restaurant there, but do you have any insight as to what the owner is looking to put in here and any flexibility or?
No, I don't know what the owner is going to intend is, and I think the real estate agent is trying to secure those tenants now, and you know, it could be a restaurant, could be drive-through cleaners or pharmacy, whatever. So we don't have one right now, but in this type of development, these small commercial buildings, it's a very key element to this type of development to have a drive-through. Especially, we just went through COVID, you know, and that really helped these smaller businesses to stay open, to have that kind of facility. And really, it's critical for these types of buildings. So what we're asking for is the ability to have a drive-through. And I think that's the only issue that really you're talking about, because by right, we're allowed to have a commercial building there.
Sir, the calls that we've had this week.
Come on up.
Or excuse me, this month have been mainly from pharmacies. Let's see, pharmacies, Edward Jones was another one. They want to put an office there.
Okay.
Not a laundromat, but a cleaners. That's about it. Cleaners. That's it. I think that's about it, isn't it? I haven't been contacted directly by any kind of restaurant though. But that's all I know at this point.
I'd add the comment that, you know, based on our definition of a drive-in restaurant, that definitely seems to me that it's directed something more towards, as Mr. Grummer read, encouraging consumption in vehicle, which reads strongly to me that would be something directed towards something like a Sonic, which, you know, looking at the parking here, I definitely don't know that fits here. But in that same token, I'm not sure that necessarily covers drive-through restaurants, which may be a gap in our code, which, at least based on what we're presented here, you know, I'm not sure, I can't say if it does or doesn't need a conditional use permit, but I'm not sure that drive-in restaurant fits. And based on what we read here, I don't see a restriction that would prevent a pharmacy, for example, from having a drive-through window, even if there were not a conditional use permit. But that may be up for debate.
Well, and in reviewing that definition, I mean, it did not, speaking of drive-in, we interpreted it as being one or the other. It could be anything. You're driving in to get your food, whether it's through a drive-in kiosk or drive-through. So anyway, I wish there was a better definition, but that was the best that was in there.
Mr. Chairman, question. Could this issue be tabled as a conditional use to some future date when we know exactly what might be going in there? Or does it have to be discussed tonight?
No.
I think possibly the bigger question would be if we did, well, like I said, it's a recommendation, so the city council has ultimate say, but is there any sort of restriction, as we do with other issues that may not pass, that they can only come back within so many months or a year after if this is not approved? I mean, we frequently deal with conditional use permits by tenants that move in to existing buildings, and I don't see why this would be different, to answer Mr. Fisher's question, but would there be anything that if they were denied a conditional use permit this time around, would they have to wait any particular period before they applied again? So, again, the denial of the conditional use by city council does not restrict the site plan approval. And there is a development plan being in a PRD and a plat. Of course, the development plan goes to city council and is a recommendation as well. City council can deny the development plan, which is basically the site plan, so it can be killed there as well. But to answer your question as far as the use and whether your decision can be based on use,
To my understanding, you cannot base your decision on this. It's based on the site plan construction of a strip mall that has no use.
Can I jump in? I'm sorry, I've pushed my button several times, but I know it's confusing when everybody's, our conditional use procedure, and I was just looking at the code, 94-93 says applications for conditional use approval shall be made by the owner operator of the proposed business. It sounds to me, after hearing like everybody discuss tonight where we are in this process and that we don't have an actual proposed business that's even applying to be a drive-in restaurant here, this is premature. I think we need to review the other items, and then if a business comes in that wants to operate a drive-in restaurant, then they need to come back and apply for the conditional use.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. A procedural point well taken. So at least my thoughts are, certainly we could table this, or we could go ahead and issue a recommendation to City Council, but it does not appear we have an owner-operator that is before us with a particular use.
So you want us to approve a site plan that has, can accommodate that without a conditional use?
I think that's acceptable, because if you have a different business that's a dry cleaner or a pharmacy, it's not a conditional use. So it might be perfectly acceptable, but when that owner of that business wants to operate and use that drive-in window as a restaurant, then they need to come and ask for the conditional use. And that's 94-93.
And I guess if it was built with the drive-up window, it would be a code enforcement issue if they were using it improperly. But we have, our options here are either issue a do pass recommendation, issue a do not pass recommendation, or defer. So not necessarily to cut off any discussion, but those are our options if anybody is inclined to make a motion at this point.
Well, it appears that what we're dealing with here is a spec building. They don't have any permanent people or folks signed up on leases at this juncture, so it's kind of a dilemma at this point. And I understand what the objections are, so I don't know which way we head at this point.
I think that
So with that, if you're considering by right a pharmacy that could go into the location, then approving the site plan allows for that, because there's no definition for a drive-in pharmacy or a drive-through pharmacy. But if a restaurant, as the city attorney mentioned,
It's approved, I think.
What's that?
I think we approved the site plan, and you're saying that I think the drive-in comes in, it's from a PRD perspective, it will go.
What kind of drive-in?
The one that you just read,
Well, if it's a pharmacy,
Yes.
then it doesn't meet the criteria of a restaurant. So
If it's a pharmacy, it doesn't need, we don't need a conditional use permit.
that's correct. So you can still have the drive-in and the pickup window and meet the requirements of what's allowed as a pharmacy.
My recommendation is we defer the conditional use permit only.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
Sure.
Commissioner Ramsey?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on this motion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, conditional use permit will be deferred. Before we get past this, Madam City Attorney or Mr. Grummer, do we have to defer to a particular time? Or is this going to be an indefinite deferral?
So I guess I'm not sure what y'all are doing by deferring. Does that mean you're tabling it until?
Our code states defer, with Mr. Lyons here.
So 94-97.
Section 9497, subsection A3, it just simply says defer and does not require us to set time limit.
Okay. I think.
It might never come back. We don't know.
I think an applicant might have a right to appeal that decision if they were a proper applicant, but I don't think they are a proper applicant because they're not an owner or an operator of a business that's actually trying to operate as conditional use. So I think it's probably the right decision to defer until you have an applicant that falls into the category that's allowed to apply.
All right, we'll be, deferred indefinitely. We'll move on to the proposed preliminary plat. Mr. Drummer?
All righty. Can you move to the plat, Jason? Thank you. So this property's never been platted, but we were able to recover where it was part of preliminary plats that came through on the subdivisions, which listed it as the phase 18, and not tract 4, but should be modified to lot 4. You were provided a list from the, let me get to that real quick. Your checklist. The applicant has complied with everything with the exception of number 5, all easements should be labeled accordingly. There's 2 10-foot easements that are unlabeled. Building line on the north boundary line should be shown as 15 feet, and then the drainage detention areas should be notated on the plat. In original iterations, working with them, there was drainage detention, but in order to meet the parking requirements, they added their parking and took away the drainage. So the discussions were to meet the drainage requirements by possibly going underground. But all of that would have to be reviewed and approved by the city attorney. So staff, no other comments on the plat. Staff's recommending approval of the preliminary plat contingent on meeting all staff, city engineer, and commissioner comments of drainage easements and detention. So there are no dedications on this, so the plat would stay with with the planning commission and not city council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Drummer. Any commissioner questions, comments? Does anyone have a motion?
Chairman, I make a motion for a due pass recommendation to the city council to approve the preliminary.
This would be an approval, not a recommendation.
Due pass recommendation?
No, it's
Preliminary
No,
plat.
it's a motion.
Preliminary plat stays with us.
Stays with you.
It'd be an approval, not a recommendation.
Yeah, it was written on here wrong.
No, it's page 4 at the very
Top page?
top of the page.
That's what I was reading.
No, you're in subsection C. Go above.
You're looking at the development plan.
Okay. Hey, I
Thank
got,
Commissioner Stevens for pointing Mr. Fisher in the right direction.
I was on the preliminary development plan.
Very good. Ms. Fisher, your motion?
My motion would be to approve the preliminary plat, lot 4, phase 18, contingent upon meeting all staff, city engineering, and commissioner comments.
Second.
I have a motion, multiple seconds. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, preliminary plat is approved. Move on to the proposed preliminary development plan. Mr. Drummer, staff comments?
So you'll note that the landscape plan and the preliminary development plan are on the same. Getting too close. Sorry about that. Are on the same document. So the preliminary development plan does serve as the site plan, being that this is a commercial review. You notice it is oriented to Country Club Parkway, and the sanitation pickup is on the southeast corner. You'll also notice that there's fencing on the north side to provide screening from the adjacent residential. And Jason, if you have any further comments from the development plan, please feel free to include.
So this.
Oh.
So this preliminary development plan, as well as the landscaping plan and what's to follow is the commercial building design, probably addresses a lot of the comments that were raised as far as lighting and landscaping. The landscaping rules along the perimeter are canopy trees every 30 feet, which initially the plan did not have them on the preliminary, if you remember from the subcommittee. We worked with the architect and engineer, and they've added the trees to that north side. They've also added trees on the south side. We've asked these also to be more of a vertical canopy versus a horizontal canopy. The reason being, if there is a potential drive-through there, you would have issues with vehicular access as far as the height of any canopy trees. The landscaping, trees and hedgerow along Country Club Parkway as a standard with your parking lots that have a street frontage, as well as you'll notice it on the Diamond Center Drive as well, which is a public street. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. As far as lighting, they will be they were asking for light poles. 18 feet is the max on the light poles. All lighting has to be downward and shrouded, so that means the lighting will be shielded and it should not go across any property lines. So they'll be kept within that boundary, and that may be we're waiting on wall packs as far as on the buildings, but again, wall packs on the buildings themselves must be downward and shrouded as well, so you're not gonna have a floodlight sitting on top of the roof shooting out onto adjacent properties. It will be on the walls and it will be downward. So any questions I can help answer with from any of the commissioners or attorney.
Any questions, comments to staff? Or comments in general?
So as a result of our first action of deferment, we're going to be approving a plan that is permitting a drive-through window. I don't know if we can stretch any more than that, right? So this menu board and things of that nature, although they're listed on here, does those need to be taken off? Or
Well,
are we
they
gonna
would not
permit the
be
pickup window? They're gonna build it with the pickup window if we move forward with this and the whole allotment? I don't know. I'm just a little confused about the whole deferment, so.
They wouldn't be permitted to operate with the menu board or as a restaurant until the owner of the proposed restaurant, the restaurant that wanted to operate in that location, came and applied for that conditional use. So I don't know whether they're gonna go ahead and build a menu board. They may wanna, that may be some contingencies there that we wanna include. But obviously I think they're gonna build what's appropriate to the actual business that's gonna be located there.
So, and again, that's directed towards a conditional use on a restaurant-type use. So, based on what I'm understanding is that a drive-through pharmacy would be allowed. So, you would be voting on the drive-through on the existing site plan, unless you wish to request and make your comments to have the board removed until such time that a conditional use is applied for a restaurant. But I think with that, as for any other use, I don't know.
Further questions, comments?
It might be appropriate to remove the menu board.
It's just a question.
I don't know. Because once we approve this, you can go there.
The menu board's there. I don't think anybody drives up before a pharmacy has a menu board.
I don't think so.
Our realtor has indicated that there's not been, so I'm just kind of scratching my head about that.
Of course, that is something that they can always plan for and wire for, but not install and be part of the, because whenever any business comes in here, they're going to have to apply for a business license and go through the standard process to make sure that it's appropriately zoned. In our new system that actually we're launching internally next month that we've been implementing is going to have the process to make sure that we have those checks and balances. So to make, if it's a concern on the site with the noise and the audible factor when it comes to the actual menu board or whatnot, I believe you can make that as a condition on the site plan approval, whether to have, not to have, or to
Nothing further.
Further questions, comments? Does anyone have a motion?
My position would be to remove the menu board, and if a drive-in restaurant comes through for conditional use, then they can request it.
Okay.
Well, would something like a menu board be required to be shown on the development plan? I mean, certainly, it seems to, understand Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Fisher, it certainly seems like a blessing of the menu board if we approve this, development plan with it on there, but would it even be required?
I think it's
Depends on
best to have
business.
it on the development plan, just to show the siting and the location of that.
Anything further? Does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion for a due pass recommendation to city council approve the preliminary.
I'm sorry, this stays with, I'm sorry.
That goes due pass?
No, it's due pass, my bad.
Preliminary development plan for Lot 4, Phase 18 of Country Club of Arkansas, contingent on meeting all staff, city engineer, and commissioner comments.
Second.
To get specific, do you want to incorporate it subject to Mr. Fisher's specific comments regarding the menu board? Or just?
Any commissioner comments?
Any commissioner comments, okay. I have a motion, do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second, any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no?
No.
A vote of 5 yes, 1 no, and 1, I guess, vacancy. We'll issue a due pass recommendation, subject to staff, engineer, and commissioner comments. Move on to the proposed landscape plan. Any further staff report?
I believe Jason addressed those pretty well, unless you have any additional comments, Jason.
Commissioner, questions or comments regarding the landscape plan? Do I have a motion?
And I apologize, one additional thing. There were additional comments that were requested that came from public comment. I'm not too sure if the commissioners wish to acknowledge. Of course, we could certainly review those before the time that it goes in front of on the development to city council. But either way, there was some requests that as far as the type and use of screening and whatnot.
Further questions or comments? I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the landscape plan for proposed development located at 1020 Country Club Parkway, contingent on meeting all staff, city engineer, and commissioner comments.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no?
Nope.
We have a vote of 5 yes, 1 no, 1 vacancy. Landscape plan is approved. Move on to the commercial building design. Do we have any further staff comment?
All right, Jason, again, since he played a role in the review of this, I'm going to let him touch base on it.
So as you can see, the building, 5 suites. I will say they are using all primary or earth tone-ish stone, stucco. One thing that I will say that is nice about this commercial building design is they're not using any ephes. They're using all stone and stone, stucco, brick veneer. So as you can see on the picture, that all sides are very similar. To address the comment earlier, this is going to have a very similar look to Mr. Park's convenience store down the road on Diamond Park. I think the brick tone may be a little bit darker, but it's very similar in nature with the brick and stone veneer. And then the only addressing that we had to clear up will be once we get wall packs to see what they're putting on the walls as far as the lighting, to ensure that the lighting is going to be downward and shrouded and it meets all of our specs.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lyon. Questions or comments from the commission? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the commercial building design for the proposed development, 1020 Country Club Parkway, contingent upon meeting all staff, city engineer, and commission comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Those in favor, yes? Yes. Those opposed, no?
No.
Again, it is approved by a vote of 5 in favor, 1 against, 1 vacancy. We'll now move on to subsection number 4, the DeVoe Bend subdivision. Mr. Grummer, staff report.
Okay. Jason, there you go. So this property is actually a vacant greenfield parcel that is north of Country Club of Arkansas, Phase 24C, which was previously approved. This is actually located to the northeast from the previous item around the corner. The applicant is proposing a private subdivision with private streets and a gated community, single-family residential development, comparable to what was going on in the Country Club of Arkansas. It is around the White Oak Bayou. So the area to the east, which for the majority is within the floodplain. This area is not. The staff comments. The applicant has met all of staff comments, with the exception of perimeter treatments, such as fences, should be noted on the plan. Staff is recommending a do pass recommendation to City Council contingent on meeting all staff, city engineer, and commissioner comments.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grummer. Any questions or comments from the commission on the proposed preliminary plat?
Again, I wasn't at subject. Can we talk a little bit about this canoe access, public-private? Was that discussed at any level?
So as far as it has one singular access into the property, connecting from Milligan, and they are proposing private streets that would be maintained by the POA and would be notated in the bill of assurance.
So the 16-foot gravel drive coming off the roundabout that's going to be private to the canoe kayak access, but then you have public, so someone could walk in as well, right?
Right. So
park and carry or towed or whatever the case is.
So one of the things which was part of the discussions was creating potential public space for public access to the bayou. This is one of the nicer parts, and they originally had a trail system on the northern part along the bayou that was within the private track. They have since moved the line in order for that to be in Track B, and Track B is the open space to the east. So they've done this in a means of trying to connect to a public trail system that's being proposed to wrap around the rest of the bayou so it can connect to the other trail systems that are next to the softball fields. The private kayak access, Jason, is this the most up-to-date? I don't think, there's another, let's see. Can you pan out a little bit? Okay. So in the So you are correct. So that would actually be a public access road that would come in, open to the public, and the private side would be just for the residential to access from the gates. So the gates are to the north of that gravel private drive. And they're proposing a potential small parking area on the, that would have minimal access. Their main concern was to provide public access, and this is something that the developer is still in the process and conversations with the city on that. Nothing's set in stone. They're not donating or contributing any land to the city. But they did allow the Track B, and if there's an applicant representative here, they can speak to it. I believe Holloway Engineering is the applicant representative. They're proposing small parking area for public access.
So there's nothing that's going to be dedicated that's going to be included tonight? Or is the roundabout going to be dedicated at the entrance?
Right, that would be considered private. So so anything that is going past the lot line would be considered private access, including the.
Private begins.
Right.
From here.
Exactly at the lot line.
Yeah.
So you'll see, there you go, thank you, Commissioner. It says private begins along the lot line. So right now, the way it's set up, the POA would be responsible for everything within both tracks. Now, in the future, if they decide to contribute, dedicate or whatnot to the city, then I'm assuming that that would be discussed. But, Mr. Chair, I'll defer to the applicant's representative for anything there.
Are the gates gonna be locked?
Roy Andrews, 3 Monarch Drive. The intent.
Welcome, Roy.
Good evening. The intent would be that during the day that they would be open, much like some of the other neighborhoods have been, but at night that they would be closed and card access only. But that deliveries and trash during the day would have access.
Jason, can you pan out just a little bit?
So, okay, hang on a second. So the roads are private?
Yes.
So the whole thing's private?
Correct.
Like a better understanding?
Correct.
Okay, and you got gate, but there's not a gate coming off this Milligan Drive, right? Can't do that? Gate
No,
there.
the gate's past the roundabout, so that if somebody were to get in there, they could proceed around the roundabout and head back out.
Yeah.
Our traffic circle. And there has been discussion to look at additional public access on Track B, but that's still in the works because that would actually affect another development that's already been platted, so we can't proceed with that until we go back and fix the other.
Further questions, comments?
So what will be dedicated? Cul-de-sac?
No, it's intended to be private.
It's intended to be private as well?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing, everything's private?
At this time, yes.
Is it still the applicant's intent to set up an improvement district for maintenance?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Chairman, subcommittee, I had brought up the question about the teardrop cul-de-sacs. Has the fire marshal and fire chief approved those?
Yes, they have. And he's out. I can go get him if we want to
Well,
directly ask him.
It's one of the things
Sleeping.
I think, Scott, that we need in our packet. If they've given the approval, we
Right.
need it in here.
And I apologize for that.
And
That's okay.
let's make it conditional that the comments have been addressed.
There's a few in the city that we have teardrops. There's one in my subdivision. Similar.
The main condition from the Fire and Public Works was that the radius of that is sufficient to handle their vehicles. And after further conversation, they actually designed these a little bit wider, if I'm not mistaken,
We
than
did.
your normal small
Increase
roundabouts.
the radius.
Right. So effectively, staff, fire was okay with that.
Okay.
They would still get one more review when we submit actual plans.
You got a pedestrian gate on the front side. Do you not want to put one on the back side for now, since all that's private?
Out the back,
Mm-hmm.
on the north side of the boundary?
Not at this time, but one of the staff comments was we have to address additional fencing,
Yes.
boundary treatments. We can, that's not a problem.
So hung up on it.
Ms. Gunderman, a comment?
I do, may I?
You may. Don't go too far, Mr. Andrews.
Jennifer Gunderman, 321 Carondelet, and apparently a big oversight on my part. The letter that came in the mail, I was prepared, obviously, to speak to the other development tonight. I'm one of the houses that backs up to this, and this is brand-new information to me. I understand how these things work. There are certain things, obviously, that have been approved to get it to this point, so this may be too late in the process. I live on one of those houses. I moved in 2 years ago. That was the spring that we had enormous amounts of rain. I have walked through this to that bayou. It is beautiful. I was under the impression that this was unbuildable for two reasons. One, because it's the wetlands that have been protected so much in the entry, or excuse me, the new exit. I don't know how you can build this close to that bayou. And secondly, I don't know where the water can go. The day after I closed on my house, it was raining so hard, I was out there with the shovel digging ditches so that my back patio would not flood. Because there's a concrete path that goes directly behind my house and a fence. There is nowhere else for the water to go. And I actually, before I closed on my house, I researched FEMA maps. I was very concerned about this being in the floodplain because it is so, there's just nowhere for the water to go. And all of the developments out there, I'm still amazed at where they're continuing to build. But that bayou, when it rained so hard, it was encroaching, and I don't know what kind of lengths you'll have to go to protect the houses from flooding. So I would ask you to defer this and look very seriously at the wetlands issue, if that's not already been cleared. And secondly, to look at where this water is going to go, because it is awful out there. And I had to put in a $15,000 drainage system immediately after moving into my house because there was nowhere for the water to go. And I'm one of those houses on Carondelet that's backed up, and it's only going to be worse for those people there. And that bayou is there to drain it, and it is all lowlands, and it's where wildlife and things are, but it's lower than our houses. And so I just don't know, again, with the bayou, unless you're going to dig it out, I don't know where the water's going to go. So I would ask you to please, have those two things been evaluated already?
So, being on the preliminary development plan, it is contingent upon the city engineer review of civil plans. Civil plans have not been developed on that yet. That comes after the approval of the preliminary development plan and plat. And the contingencies are that they meet all drainage requirements. One of the things that we look at in the city specifically is the impacts on drainage to adjacent property owners on new development, especially with the drainage issues that we have around the city. So one of the things that I'm making sure of is that when drainage plans come in, that they have placed the appropriate drainage to protect adjacent property owners from any increase in water from what was previously.
Okay, and I understand and appreciate that. I'm just saying the bayou is where the water goes. Where will the water go? And I think that's a critical question.
So they're required to create detention, and there's detention to the, I believe to the, there you go, Jason's pointing to it. So they've got detention in which they'll be taking water, and there's detention on the east. So they are required to take their water to detention, detain it, and then release it into an approved area that would eventually go into the bayou. Of course, the water is going to the bayou right now. They'll just be managing it before it gets into the bayou.
And then I guess the second question is about the wetlands. I know I'm over time, but
Yes.
Is this not the wetlands that's been so protected and took 20 years to get us an exit?
Well, we do have delineated wetland protection. You can see where Jason has on there. That's the map. So the wetlands are protected, but this is actually developable land. And there are areas that are in the floodplain. They are required to meet all required with FEMA as far as the certificates. But on this, the area where they're building the property, actually they've stayed out of all of that. Mm-hmm. So it does comply.
Well, I would just offer finally, this in theory, it's beautiful. I think it's in a terrible location. I really believe that there's some significant water issues that really need to be fleshed out. Thank you for your time.
Further questions or comments from the commission?
Does that wetland boundary pretty much follows that floodway line for the most part?
looking like, yes.
in this area anyway?
I believe
It gets out of it in others, though.
I believe that.
Go ahead. Oh, there you go.
So Scott can probably talk more on it, but yeah, this is the delineated wetlands, and actually it does go down a little bit south of the floodway right here in this little notch going into this detention area. But otherwise, yeah, you are correct. It essentially follows the floodway for the most part.
So, and Jason, if you'll pan out just a little bit so we can see more. All this land in this area is privately owned, including the wetlands. All that is privately owned. The city only owns areas to the west. So, and these are things I'm not too sure as to what is allowed and not allowed from private ownership of a Corps of Engineer managed, or FEMA. But either way, being privately owned, the city doesn't have any, other than the zoning, which being PRD is allowed for residential use.
Further discussion on the preliminary plat? I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the proposed preliminary development plat for the DeVoe Bend subdivision pending other staff or commissioner comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes. I'll move on to the proposed preliminary development plan. Further staff comments?
Staff recommends a due pass, this is going to City Council, a due pass motion to City Council to approve the preliminary development plan contingent on meeting all staff, city engineer, and planning commissioner comments. And again, Jason, if you have any other than that hasn't been stated already.
Any discussion by the commission? I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a due pass recommendation to the city council to approve the preliminary development plan for the DeVoe Bend subdivision contingent upon meeting all staff, city engineering, and planning commission comments.
Second. Yes, I do have a question for you, Bo, if you would. So, Mr. Crum, when you're saying this, and I guess it doesn't really matter, I'm not hung up on it, just a comment. So, you say you're working with the applicant regarding access, but it's private, so I don't know how that's to work. There is no obligation for him to provide access at all. He can gate here, he can gate there, he doesn't have to provide anything, other than, I guess, just goodwill of the owner. That's it, so.
That's correct, unless the city's wanting to take the property from him, so.
Well, he'd be after willing to dedicate it if that was the case.
That's correct. But that's one of the reasons why he separated it out as a separate track, so that he can work through those details, and we can come to that later on. If anything changes that impacts the overall development plan, if it extends beyond what's allowed by staff to approve, then it'll come back for a revision.
Well, this wouldn't have anything to do with the plat, but as it moves through the plan, the intent is that for that, it just has public written all over it, and it's just, I think we have to be maybe a little bit more transparent in that it is private altogether, and it doesn't have to do any of that.
Yeah, and this is one of the conversations that we were just really carrying, is that the bayou is an asset to the city that many people don't understand how beautiful it is, as well as an economic development tool. And that's one of the reasons why I appreciate the applicant in working with us to try to have some public access. But again, without the city coming in and taking or purchasing the property for public access, we have to work through those details with the private owner.
Well, I guess he was kind enough to break it out for Track B for that opportunity, perhaps.
He is accommodating, and I will say that for the record that the developer is, or the proposed developer is on the White Oak Bayou Conservancy Group. His interest is in preservation of the bayou. So, as well as providing these natural resources for the public to use. So he's been very willing to work with us.
No further comment.
Further discussion? All right, we do have a motion on the table. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Those opposed, no. We'll issue a do pass recommendation. We'll now move on to, item group number 5, the Harris edition. Staff report, please.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. So this property is located off of Commercial Park Drive. This is something that the commission is probably familiar with. It's come through Planning Commission several times. This was previously approved, a rezone from a C3 use to a PRD by both the Planning Commission and the City Council, which granted right for the development plan, which is in front of you. The development plan, which is also the site plan, was approved last month. But one of the things that was a contingency was that they did provide us updated landscape plan and elevations, which is part of the requirement because the multifamily component along the Commercial Park Drive, which is a proposed townhomes, those require commercial review requirements, which includes the elevation and the landscape. So what you have in front of you, this stays with the commission. These are approvals by you. It does not go to City Council. And so you first have, make sure I'm seeing this correctly, the proposed landscape plan. And again, Jason, he had detailed analysis of this, and I'll let him kind of share some on the landscape.
Okay, so the landscape plan, we're making sure they're adding plenty of shrubs, so the shrubbery along the Commercial Park Drive, that's just standard with a commercial development. Multifamily is considered commercial. Trees, you can see they've lined it up pretty well all along. They've lined up a tree buffer along Maumelle Boulevard, which will be pretty much replanting due to having this access drive for fire, sanitation. The only area of concern that we have is along the private road, and I think we're still commenting on that a little bit, is it appears to show a rather large concrete pathway and then a 5-foot sidewalk. Typically on your vehicular areas, you have shrubbery to block headlights of cars pulling in, especially when it is a residential nature, which multifamily is in that case. So that's our only outstanding issue, is addressing that. Lights were added. I believe that's these little, looks like little suns. However, they were not notated in the legend, so that's another smaller issue, just to make sure illumination is correct. Light pole heights and everything is addressed at that point. Other than that, the commercial side of it, it looks good. So ours is an approval recommendation, of course, meeting all staff and commissioner comments.
So, and to piggyback, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, on the comment concerning the shrubs in front of the townhomes, we did review that. In the ordinance, we do not have a specific ordinance that speaks to that here, although there is a side one that it's somewhat related, but it didn't provide a requirement. So that's not something that we could require on them. It's something that came in as something to be considered when dealing with the parking spaces. Now, can you move to the individual site, the individual landscape plan? Do we have that attached on here? There you go. So you can also see that they included a typical unit detail with the landscaping around it, which also does have specific shrubbery in front of the actual units themselves. So, which may serve for that purpose.
I do have a question.
Commissioner Fisher, go ahead.
And I want to make sure I understood what, Jason, you said. And that was along Commercial Park. The units that are there, talked about something about heading and lighting. What are you talking about?
More on the private roads.
What private road?
So can you point to it, I'm sorry, can you point to it, Jason, on here? So he's talking more about the parking that's on the private road on the internal where the cars come. Right.
Not Commercial Park?
Not on Commercial Park Drive. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're on the same page.
Yeah, so commercial park, you're gonna have, there is some periphery when it's along a street that has to be maintained, and that's where the trees, and I'll have to double check the ordinance, at the code, for any type of shrubbery that might be needed along the front, as far as with the fencing and anything else of that nature.
And I'll also mention that the way that the site plan, in order to have the paved road, the 27-foot wide paved road that's on the western side, that's bordering Maumelle Boulevard, those are to be replanted and provide a buffer screen on that side.
Further discussion? We'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed landscape plan for the Harris addition, contingent on meeting all staff, city engineer, and planning commissioner comments.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. All right, proposed landscape plan is approved. We'll move on to the proposed commercial building design. Do we have further staff comment?
Jason, you're doing a good job. Go ahead and take it on.
Okay, commissioners, as you remember from the subcommittee meeting, and for the commissioners that were not there, the big discussion in the subcommittee meeting when you looked at the commercial building design was the use of architectural metal. Our ordinance, our code, prohibits any metal being used as a facade in a commercial or residential zone. With that said, the applicant has gone in and has updated their facades to meet our requirements. So that they have met that requirement, and I'll scroll down and let y'all look at what the buildings look like with the different amounts of material.
That's still where Hardy was at?
Yes.
And I believe one of the comments that we had was that the front, if you had already mentioned, the front pathways need to be added along Commercial Park Drive to indicate front elevation to Commercial Park Drive. I believe that was indicated.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the proposed commercial building design for Harris Addition, contingent on meeting all staff, city engineer, and planning commissioner comments.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Commercial building design is approved. We'll now move on to item group number 6, the Harrison Pfeiffer addition.
Mr. Chair, I believe the applicant's representative is here to speak to that, if you don't mind.
Mr. Andrews? Go ahead.
Roy Andrews, 3 Monarch Drive. Planning Commission, we would request that you move to table this item to next month.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Your request granted.
Thank you.
Okay. Quick trigger, Commissioner Fisher. I'll now close the public hearing. We'll move on to liaison reports. July 6th, that was mine. First, we had the first reading of Ordinance 1028 to amend the Maumelle zoning map. That was for the Pfeiffer property. It's between, Commercial Park and the industrial. That was tabled until the second, council meeting in October where they will resume the first reading. Next was second reading of ordinance 1035 to accept dedication of streets and drainage in phase 24C of Country Club of Arkansas. There was, resolution 2021-16 regarding the conditional use permit for our miniature golf facility. That was passed. And there were a couple, resolutions regarding the, ongoing battle with Entergy regarding the Counts Massey extension. Would encourage you to have a look at the video for further detail on that. Now I'll move to July 19th, Commissioner Ramsey.
Well, Energy was back up there. The mayor requested to amend the agenda to put a resolution in where I guess the city would pay for it and be reimbursed once they battle it out of who's really paying for it.
The city's gonna pay for it?
No, we just have it's a letter of credit that's, we agreed that if we lose at the planning commission and we lose whatever appeals we're gonna take, I'm sorry, yes, it's been a long night, Public Service Commission, then we will pay for it if we lose all of our arguments.
You're gonna pay for it.
But we have a letter, thank you. I appreciate your vote of confidence. We do have a letter of credit that's gonna be issued.
Come on.
Energy's got a whole lot.
David, what are you wasting your time on?
Oh, in my modified, agenda, I lost where I was, so I'll now move on to assignments for, okay. August 2nd, Commissioner Johnson, that's your liaison assignment. August 16th, Commissioner Stevens, that'll be yours. Does anybody have anything further? Any motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. We're adjourned.
Yeah, think about this one thing.
15 years. It's, I think I'm 6 or 7 on, and this is the longest by far.